Good morning, everyone. Yesterday, we discussed in our class on a essay, which was found, really it was a speech that was given by the first Rebbe of Chabad, which was put in essay form in the book called Likuti Torah by the first Rebbe of Chabad, which is designed to bring Moshiach. This book explains mostly what is God, what is the God of the Jews, and what is the way to connect to Him, or more exactly, to serve Him. The difference between connecting is you can connect for yourself, but serving God means that you don't think about yourself. You think about giving to God or doing what God wants and not receiving what you want. So yesterday we had this very interesting story about Nachum Ish Gamzu. Good morning. Nachum Ish Gamzu. Nachum Ish Gamzu is going to prove a point that the Rebbe is trying to make, answer a question that the Rebbe asked in the beginning of this essay. And namely, the question is, can anyone explain this bizarre story that's in our Torah portion this week about the copper snake? I think yesterday I said the bronze snake. It's a lot of times translated bronze, but it's not. It's copper. Nechushet is copper. So what's the story? The story goes is that the Jewish people, they angered God in the desert, one of the many times they did. And God sent a bunch of serpents or snakes to kill them. And the snakes were biting people, and everyone came to Moses, and they understood that they had sinned, and they were willing to repent, but the snakes didn't understand that. They were still biting them. So Moses prayed to God. God said, okay, take a snake, make some sort of a snake, and put it on a pole. And the people will look up at the snake and they'll live. So Moses, on his own, he decided what material to make the snake from. He made the snake from copper, because it's like similar to words nachash and nachoshet. And he put it on a pole, and sure enough, everybody looked up at the snake. They lived. So all the commentaries say, what are you talking about? Moses looked up at the snake. The snake, I mean, everyone looked up at a snake, and the snake was the problem. Snake, how could the snake? Because Moses put the snake on a pole. That makes no sense. What type of, and this story is in the Bible. It's in this week's Torah portion. We learned it yesterday. These are the words of God. You want to get cured from biting snakes? Take a snake, make it out of copper, put it on a pole, and lift it up in the air. And look at it, and it'll save you. Says, well, no, that's not, because it has to be Moses that puts it on the pole. Why do you have to make a snake and put it on the pole? So it's even in the Mishnah. So it says the snake did not cure them because they looked up. So they looked in the direction of the heavens. That reminded them of God, and that's what saved them. So obviously the question is, just tell them to look up at God, look up at the heavens. So lift your eyes up to the heavens. And that's what we have to have a snake for. A snake on the pole. Not only that, a snake happens to be, it's forbidden to make a picture of a serpent. Serpents, there's some pictures that are forbidden. The serpent is one of it. Serpent, I guess it's a very big, thing by the non-Jews. The idolaters worship serpents. Okay. In any case, what's the idea? So he says, well, I'm going to tell you a story. We learned the story about Nachum Ish Gamzu, that he was assigned by the Jewish people to bring a gift to the Emperor of Rome in the hope that the Emperor of Rome would rescind this terrible decree that he had made on the Jewish people. And on the way, he stopped off at an inn, and when he was asleep, as the owner of the inn changed the diamonds or whatever were in this box that he was taking to the king to give he changed it for sand. And when he got to the king, so the king opened up the box to see the diamonds, and there was a bunch of sand. So Nachum Ish Gamzu said, that's where he got his name from. Gamzu the Tova. Whenever a not good thing would happen, he would say, this is also for the best. In other words, everything that happens from God. And God is good, so everything, this is for the best. Or this is the best. And sure enough, the king was just about to say the words off with his head. And who knows what he was going to do to all the Jewish people. I mean, this was their emissary to make fun of him. All of a sudden, there appeared a great, majestic noble who was really Elijah the prophet, disguised as a noble, and said, Your Majesty, don't scare this man. Let him finish his sentence. This dirt is really weapons that Abraham used, the first Jew, against everybody in the world was against him, Abraham. And he used this against his enemies, and that's how he succeeded. He's giving you an amazing gift. And the king used it, and sure enough, it worked. Every little grain of sand turned into be, a sword or 10 swords or whatever it is, arrows or something. So the king, of course, rewarded him tremendously. So the Rebbe says, okay, so that's just, let's see. How does this have to do with the pole and the snake on the pole? What's this going on? How does this, so we'll see. I know. That's the whole idea of prayer. Shabaguf Adam, when a person is a soul in a body in this physical world. The soul as it is in the body, sovelet soros. It suffers from all sorts of difficulties, biyasurim, and tortures, pain. Because the soul wants to be connected back to the truth, to God, to the source. And the body doesn't let it. Right, the soul, before it comes into the body, it exists. The soul doesn't really die. The soul comes into the body and then it goes out of the body. When the soul is in the body, so the body is dominant. And the person says, all of a sudden, this is my hand, this is my foot, and other people's hands and feet are not my hands and my feet. Right? So I feel myself. My body becomes me. When the soul is up in heaven, so God is me. The soul as it is in heaven feels that it's just a creation. But when it's in the world, it feels that it's a product at best of his parents. People usually feel superior to their parents, right? Like they have this thing called evolution. The later the generations, the more superior. So according to that, like first of all, there was like amoebas, and then they developed into whatever it is, protozoas or something, and then they developed into tadpoles, and they developed into, then they developed into rocks, and then to plants, and then to frogs, and then to monkeys, and then to human beings, and human beings kept going and going until it finally came to me, and I'm the best, unless I have children. Then I have children, and the children are superior to me, which is a good reason not to have children, because then you're the boss. Right? That's how the soul feels when it's in this world. But when before the soul came to the body, it didn't have any of this nonsense and this total, the falsehood of this world, that you think that you're the only one. Not only that, even when you are in the world and you realize the truth and you want to do what God says, you want to be connected, but your body doesn't let you. Like it says that the Shekhinah, the God's presence, is in exile. That God has to enliven also evil people. Right? When it says the Jewish people are in exile, means that God is in exile, and God enlivens everything. So God is forced to enliven even evil people. If Adam wouldn't have eaten from the tree, and then later on they got another chance, the Jews at Mount Sinai, if the Jews wouldn't have sinned with the golden calf, there wouldn't be any evil people. There would be no evil in the world. There'd be no murder or lust. But the fact is that Adam did eat from the tree, and the Jewish people did sin with the golden calf, and the soul is trapped in the body. And so the soul is forced, lachiot the goof. The soul has to enliven the body. The kol kavanata, and the whole purpose is enu b'shvil atzmo. The whole purpose of the soul is not for itself. Rak b'shvil lalot aguf. Why did God do? Who made this whole thing? That this body is put, the soul is put inside of the body, trapped inside of the body, controlled by the body, deluded and what do you call it? The enslaved by the body. Why did God do this? It's only in order that the soul shall eventually become dominant and elevate the body from dirt. As it is, the soul enlivens the body, gives you life. When you have life, you have free choice. So therefore, you're in the body. So you have to refine the body like silver in the hands of a refiner. The more that there is mixed bad and good, you have to refine and to purify. Balav Eish, with fire. Also, you have to refine the body, just like someone who is refining silver. So he has to get rid of the dross from the silver or from the gold, making a big fire. The higher the fire, the more refinement there is. The same thing is also we're put in the body. The body is like the dross, but it's also silver. It's precious. We have to refine the bad from the good. We have to get rid of the Yetzer Hara, the selfish impulse, to bring it to its source. Kamashal ben Amelech, like the story of the son of the king with the prostitute, Hanal. We talked about that yesterday, right? The king wants to test his son to see if his son is really royalty, if his son will really has the interests of the country in mind, or if he's just a selfish, despot or whatever. Who knows what it'll be when. So he sends him a prostitute, a beautiful woman, to entice him to act normal, right? They catch the king's son, like in England and these places. They catch the prince, going to prostitutes, to a brothel or something like that. It's in all the newspapers, and everybody, who wants a leader like that? The guy's just thinking about himself. The first opportunity, he's going to steal money. Who knows what he'll do for his own pleasures? So the king tests his son with this lady. And the same thing as God tests us by putting us in the world and giving us what's called an evil impulse that shows us really good things and entices us. Who are we going to go after? Are we going to resist or not? The more that there is bad or selfishness involved, you have to have a bigger fire. V'chazak, and strong. What's that? Prayer. That's the whole idea. It's supposed to be the idea of prayer. This is that prayer. The whole idea of prayer is supposed to be Jewish prayer. Look sometimes at the book of Psalms. How much trouble King David had, how he was always crying out to God. David passed this down to us, that the Psalms are one of the books of the Torah. He passed it down to us to let us know what we're supposed to do when there's difficulty, why God sends us difficulties. And one of the reasons is to pray. The Davik Bakono, not to forget God, to cling to God, to say, God, you sent these bad things, please help me, get rid of them. Or at least tell me what to do to defeat them, or to hold on, or to survive them. Look, and therefore, Babayas Rishon in the first temple, Shaloya Rahar, but there wasn't that much bad. Right? God was everywhere, all these prophets. Lo ayu tzarichim l'tefillah, they didn't have to have such tremendous long prayers, and it didn't have to be so excited. They would go to the temple and they would they would feel godliness. Ki'im kol ha'ma'asem, because all the deeds that they did, haya raz lahavia ra v'adinim el shosham. Everything they did, they were aware of God. They had the holy temple. They went there 3 times a year. They felt that they were being created. They felt they were being created for a purpose. The main ingredient, if you want to say the batteries, the power inside of the engine room in the holy temple was the Holy of Holies. And what was in the Holy of Holies? The Torah. The Torah was the power that refined the world, that brought godliness into the world. And one of the things in the Torah was, it said you have to bring sacrifices. Al yedei korbanos, the sacrifices. And in the first temple, they had this revelation of God. They would bring sacrifices, their thanksgiving offerings, and that was enough. But the second temple, that was enough to refine the good and eradicate the bad. But by Sheni, in the second temple, they started prayer. And the prayer was short. According to the necessity of the fire. Fire didn't have to be so big because there wasn't such bad. But now we don't have any temple. And it's already 2,000 years afterwards. And the Jewish people are really confused. We have to pray more and more. We have to pray more. And also more excitement and more enthusiasm and more emotion. Okay, now emotion does not necessarily mean that you have to jump around and yell and scream. If you want to jump around and yell and scream, that's okay, but that's not what we're talking about when we talk about emotion. We're talking about emotion means to be genuinely in love, genuinely longing for God. Genuinely longing. Usually when a person has a genuine longing and love, he doesn't jump around, usually. But each person on his own. But the idea is to be genuinely, internally, intimately loving, fearing, in awe, praising, thanking the Creator. Longing for more revelation. Begging for mercy. The Cain B'kol Dor V'Dor, also in every single generation, and Lamata below, certainly Palel, we have to pray, Bitlavut Gedola, with more enthusiasm. Veloki Echsherdari, and not because we're of a higher level. Adarab, exactly the opposite. Mipnei Gadol Ra, because we're lower. Asher Nitarev Nit Rabbe, B'kol Dor V'Dor, that there is more and more selfishness and confusion in every single generation. Is Tzarich Lafrida, we have to separate it by means of a stronger fire in prayer. How do you get to the strong fire? Before you pray, you think. Before you think, first of all, you translate the words that you're saying. You translate them and try to understand what they mean and what they mean in context of each sentence. And then you sit and think about your Creator. Am I really being created by God? Why don't I feel this? Is God really creating the whole world? Why don't I feel this? I should feel it. It should be the most obvious thing to me. God is creating the stars. God is creating the sky. God is creating my chair. God is creating my pants. God is creating everything around me. God is creating the angels. Maybe there are not angels, but God is creating me. I'm here. And you start to think about this. So what is God? What is God? How can he do this? This is incredible, right? God took the Jews out of Egypt. He did all these miracles. He creates the heavens. He creates the earth. You start to think about this and you start to realize, maybe this is really true. This is the God I'm praying to. And when you think about this, especially if you learn the ideas of Hasidut that explain how God creates all these upper worlds, and that what you thought was God that he's creating, you realize that's only a very low level of God that's created, that's involved in this creation process. It's much, much higher. And the level of God that gave the Torah is even higher. When you start to think about this, it arouses a certain sort of intimacy with the Creator. And that makes you think about God and less about yourself. That's called getting rid of the bad. Asher B'kirbo. Because bad is selfishness. Avihu El Shoshon brings it to its source. Commercial, like they said, we said, like the son of the king with the prostitute, we did that. Sheyakshu v'chayut shel hara hamachaya eich yesh lo chayut me'kodesh baruch hu. When you think, 1 second, if my evil impulse has such energy and excitement from God that is throwing all these bizarre thoughts into my mind, and these urges and lusts and whatever it is that you say, jealousy and anger and sadness and depression, if it's doing this, without God, without God, it wouldn't be able to exist. And who is enlivening all these bad thoughts? God. So God is more real than my selfish impulses. If so, and Raklal, there's really no bad. They can't call the Yisurim and all these bad things that happen in the world. When a person thinks about this, Yispardu Kol Bayavan, that all the bad will suddenly disappear. In other words, your attitude can actually change the nature of a situation. Your attitude, our attitude changes a lot. It's not like these people that say the whole world is subjective and it's just all in our mind and nothing really exists. That's not so. The world certainly does exist. And God is certainly creating everything. But there's certain things that we have control over. And one of them here, says the Rebbe, is the evil that God sends to us, bad things, misfortunes, tragedies. God forbid it should never happen. But when it does, we have to realize, listen, God is sending me this thing so that I can change it, or at least that I can survive it. It shouldn't control me. But we can sometimes even change the situation just by our attitude, like the story with Nacham Ish Gamsu, that he actually changed this dirt, which was certain death, this sand that was in the box, which was certain death. The king was getting angry. You're bringing me sand. And suddenly with his saying, Gamzu Latova, changed it. Gam Kol Tzadikim. All of the other tzaddikim were in this way. Rak Nachum Ish Gamzu Hayayochel L'Shanot. He could actually change things. Hamshacham Milamay Lamata. He actually could do this miracle actually now. Shohaya Nira Be'emet Lamata, that it could actually, he truly revealed below the truth. Shu Tov Bagashmis. Therefore, his name was Gamzu. This is good. Shu Musa Gzu. He pointed to it. This is good. But call it tzaddikim, but the other tzaddikim, other totally righteous Jews, other people that did that, me and you, normal people, or even bigger tzaddikim, the good would remain above. They maybe would not have changed it, the bad to good, physically, but at least their whole attitude would change. And it wouldn't affect them so deeply. They would realize, listen, God is sending this. I don't know why he's sending it, but he's sending this test to me. So if so, another person, if it would have happened to another person, but it didn't, because God arranged it that way. God does not provide people with tests that they can't stand. And of course, you can ask the question like I'm asking all the time, it's very hard to accept that, because they had the Holocaust and all these people that died, and Jews that have been killed through the generations, millions and millions of Jews. I mean, Hitler just did it at one time. So that's why it was, and he did it in an advertised way. That's why it's so terrible. But the fact is the first temple and the second temple, there was a greater percentage of Jews that were killed. And the tragedy was certainly greater because it affected all the Jews. The Holocaust only affected 1/3, or who knows, half of the Jews. The other half were away. But the destruction of the first and second temples affected all the Jews. Anyway, why these things happen, only Moshiach will reveal. But the point of the matter is that we can alleviate our adding to the bad of the situation by changing our attitude. How so? Realizing that it's all from God and it's all for the good. There are some people, like you have road rage. So some guy cuts off the other guy, and the person who gets cut off, he takes out a gun, he gets angry, loses it, takes out a gun and starts shooting people. So the guy gets cut off, his car gets scratched, and now he has to sit in jail for the rest of his life. If he would have just gotten calm and say, listen, this guy cut me off because God wants him to cut me off. I don't understand why. Maybe it's so that I should learn to control my anger. Maybe it's because of this guy should learn to control his anger. I don't know, but whatever it is, I have to add good to the situation. So he doesn't get angry, and he takes the guy's license plate number and he calls the police, maybe, who knows what. But he doesn't get angry, doesn't go on. He doesn't say it's him against me, what he did to me. The whole point is, why did this happen? What is the purpose of this thing happening? How can I improve the situation? And that's the whole idea. And it could be that by a proper attitude, you can actually transform the situation. Everything comes from God. You can sometimes even reveal it. Not just in your attitude, but in fact, like Nachum Ish Gamzu. And that's the whole idea of the copper snake. Why Moses had to put it on a stick, on a pole. It had to be raised up. When they looked up above, what does it mean? That they should look up above and realize what is the source of the snake. They shouldn't think that this snake, the serpents, were something separate. If so, the snake is really bad and it would remain bad. But when everybody they looked up and they looked toward God and they saw the snake was also in the direction, when they understood that this snake raising it up and its source, that it's not something separate from God, and that its life comes from God, like we said before about the prostitute with the son of the king. As soon as the son of the king thinks this lady is a prostitute and this has been sent by my father, he doesn't want me to know. They say that even there's some people that say that even the prostitute, just to make sure that she's not suspected of, to make it real, she hires another prostitute. She does the hiring, so that it's like removed, so to speak, from the king. But as soon as the king's son says, listen, this is just a test, even though it's exactly the type of a lady that he would like, and that's really, that you say, enticing him and drawing him and arousing him, and whatever you want to say. But all of a sudden the king's son says, 1 second, I'm a king. I can't do it. It's not just me and her. It's me and her and the kingship. Now, in relation to me and her, I'm the boss. But in relation to the kingship, there's something higher. There's a higher principle involved here. The same thing is with us, with the whole world. The whole world is just here in order for us to elevate it, to bring it back to its source, to reveal who we really are. Who we really are. I just was exposed yesterday. Somebody sent me one of these, some sort of a meditation thing that he's in, which comes from India. There's so many of them. And the whole thing is who you really are. Who is your real self? Your real self is this calmness and this. Well, I mean, it's true. In order to reveal your real self, you have to get rid of the bad and you have to calm yourself down. There's no doubt about it, right? So there's a certain benefit, of course, to these things, that a person gets calm and he knows how to not get excited about the world, and etc. But to change the world and to realize that the not good things in the world really are coming from God, and by means of that to elevate them, that's a little bit different. And then you realize Ein Ra Yored Milamayla means you have to be active in the world, and you realize that no bad comes from above. And therefore, the snake was from Nechoshet. Shemishtaneh, because Nechoshet is copper. The copper changes into a lot of different colors. Al Yedei Ayin, by means of its source. Amavin Yovin, where those who understand will understand. So in other words, the snake was made from copper, which changes colors. Also, that's the whole idea of the bad in this world. It changes colors. It all depends on our attitude. If we connect it, if we put it on a pole and connect it to the Creator, realizing that God sent this thing. Let's see if we can do this other mimer here. I don't know if we can. Let's see if we can try. Yeah, here it is. All right, we can start this. Let's see how much we can get done. We'll do it quickly. This is a very beautiful mimer over here. You know what? Let's stop the share.